Well, let's get in the program, Holly. It's about fertilizer. Good fertilizer. Well, I mean, there's synthetic and organic, and we're going to get into all of this. What might be best for you in your particular situation?
Sure. So let's talk about first what fertilizer is. It's an organic or synthetic material added to the soil or to the plant that is important for its nutrient value. So that is the definition of fertilizer. And so you can kind of take that.
Do you need fertilizer?
Right. Do you need fertilizer? So I think the biggest thing is knowing how your soil may be. So if you turn over, say you're going to your backyard, you want to plant a garden, you turn over your soil and it looks gray.
Okay.
Or full of clay or sandy, then you might want to consider raised beds or containers or even straw bale gardening, something else.
Because in that particular situation, you can't look at soil and go, that has a nutrient value of, or that has a pH level of, because you have to have it tested.
Right.
But you can visually look at it and go, that's sandy, that's clay, that's not good, rich compost that would be in a bag that you get from the garden center.
Right, and something might not grow successfully
right.
in it. So that's something, that's kind of some general knowledge. You can always get a soil test. If you do turn your soil over and it looks like, something might grow in it. But so you want to think about what's in your soil. And the biggest thing, there's three main components to fertilizers. And that's the NPK. So if you look at a bag of fertilizer or bottle fertilizer, what have you.
Anywhere in the world. About the only thing in the world that's universal is the three numbers on the bag of a fertilizer.
Right. And so N is for the nitrogen, and then P is for the phosphorus, and K is the potassium. So nitrogen greens the plant. Especially if you ever go to a garden center or home store and you look for like any sort of grass food.
90-0-0.
It's going to have a high N number. That's nitrogen. That makes your grass green. That makes your plants green, whatever. And then phosphorus is for the fruit and root development. So that's the middle number. And then K is just for overall health. And that's the potassium.
Now that's the big three. Now there's micro and macronutrients in fertilizer bags, but not to the focus. Everybody goes, it's got to have NPK. It doesn't talk about the sulfur, the calcium, or the magnesium level and all that.
Right.
Now, Ivory Organics has the added couple of additives to their fertilizer.
Yeah. So macronutrients, those are the big three: the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But then also calcium, magnesium, and sulfur are macronutrients. So there's like three, and there's like three more, and that's your combination, whatever.
And you have to have the big three and the majority of some trace of the mineral and macronutrients in order for the plant to grow.
Right.
If you're lacking in one, the plant's going to have a deficiency and it's going to show signs of not being healthy.
Right. So then the micronutrients are things like boron, chlorine, copper, iron, manganese, and then zinc is another one, and one called molybdenum. I don't know how to pronounce that.
So copper is one, and what was the
boron, zinc, iron, chlorine, manganese.
Magnesium.
No, not magnesium. Manganese. And so those are the micro ones, which are important. But if you ever, like you mentioned with Ivy Organics, it has the micronutrients
right,
as well.
Yeah. It has a more in-depth balance, ivyorganics.com, for their tree paint and their special blend fertilizer. So you use a couple of those that is in pond or in your pool water, chlorine, raised beds treated with copper. So they are part of the overall, these have to be included in order for life to occur, but not in dramatically large amounts.
Right. So one thing I want to touch on, though, is some fertilizer, I guess, vocabulary.
Okay.
You might be like at the garden center and you ask the dude, like, is this okay? And they're like, it's a general fertilizer. It's good for your vegetables, but you need to side dress it in. And not everybody knows what that means. So what is side dressing? It's when you take, what you do is you take your trowel, your little hand rake, whatever, and you kind of rake the soil back.
Not damaging the roots. Far enough away from the roots to where it can work itself, percolate down in, but you're not tearing the roots with your trowel or your hoe or your shovel.
So like an inch or so.
Oh, it depends on the plant.
Yeah.
If it's garlic or if it's tomatoes, you need to go about 6 to 8 inches away from the stem. Garlic, you need to go.
But the depth.
The depth, yes, about an inch.
Yeah. So you're kind of going to scratch at the soil a little bit, about an inch, but further away from the roots, as Joy had mentioned. And then you take and you apply that fertilizer, however the directions say. It's most important to read the back of the package. So whether you're using organic or synthetic, you need to follow the directions.
And here's the other thing: if you get, and we've seen this on a couple of different companies, we've gotten 3 different formulations of fertilizer from a company, and the applicational rate is different on the back of each one of those, even though they all came from the same company. So just because one bag is X amount per square feet, that doesn't mean the other 4 or 5 varieties of that company's is the same, because you can add too much.
Right.
And you can not add enough.
There's similar things for different vitamins you take. You might need, I forget what the units are, but whatever, 1,000 grams or
milligrams,
milligrams
something like that,
per day. In one thing, another thing you might need 300. So that's something to keep in mind. So then another thing that is a common fertilizer knowledge or questions is like the fresh manure versus the aged manure.
The fresh manure, there are certain animals, their manure can be applied directly to the garden without it burning. There are others, such as horse and cow, that have to age about 3 to 6 months in order to get to a breakdown form for it to be used, that it won't burn the plants. And when we talk about burning the plants, it literally curls the leaves. It does horrible things. It almost kills the plant, because there's so much fresh nitrogen that plant's sucking up, and it can't handle it. So you want to make sure that what you're using is aged or is the proper manure to use for the garden. There's, you got horses, cows, pigs, goats, chickens, rabbits, all of those, and it's different for each one of them. So you need to do your research. We're not going to go through all of them because it's not applicable to everybody, but you want to be aware if it's aged or not. And then with the horse and cow, you need to be aware if the cow or horse was eating grasses that was sprayed with a broadleaf herbicide that could be toxic to your garden as well.
Right.
Killer compost.
Yeah, killer compost. So another thing we want to touch on is a foliar spray versus like a liquid fertilizer. So a foliar spray, you spray the leaves and the tops and the bottoms of the leaves of the plant, versus a liquid fertilizer, which you apply to the soil. Liquidy.
Right. You put it at, like you're watering.
Yeah.
Now you want to. There's some fertilizers that are interchangeable that you can dilute down and spray as a foliar feed. However, you want to be aware of what it is, because some of these fertilizers can burn the foliage and you can kill the plant because you're putting too much on there. The other thing, if you're doing like a compost tea, foliar feed,
I was going to bring up compost tea. Yeah.
When the simple form of compost, 5-gallon bucket, put a scoop of finished compost in it, stir it twice a day for a week, drain off the solids, and use the liquids to feed your plants. The finer the mist that you can get on the plant, the better the plant can uptake the nutrient and the moisture that's on that leaf. Big droplets are going to be, will take a while, and then most likely they will evaporate before the plant can utilize a lot of the nutrients that's in that water droplet.
Right. I just want to touch on compost tea.
Yeah, go ahead.
Our listeners may not be familiar. I know, like, when we started using compost tea, it wasn't super familiar to me, and my family was like, what kind of tea are you making?
Right.
They thought we were drinking it. So it is something that you feed your plants, and
you feed the soil too.
I mean, you feed the soil, and you can use your finished compost. You can buy all sorts of compost tea bags. There's different brands out there. There's all sorts of ways to make compost tea. There's simple ways, or there's ways where you have to use like the bubbler, aeration, whatever.
Right.
So whatever is easier for you.
So that's just a little bit about understanding the type of fertilizer that you're using, whether it's synthetic or organic. Now, we encourage the organic because it's safe for you, your pets, the environment, and realistically, in the long run, better for plants. But it's up to your discretion. And if you do use a fertilizer that requires an application every so many days, you need to do that, because then the plants are requiring that nutrient And if they don't get it, they start to decline in production and health. Well, one thing that if you go to Walton's Inc. for your meatgistics, for your tools, for your knowledge, for
education,
spices, for everything from animal to edible, Walton's Inc. has everything that you need in order to get and know what's in the food that you're preparing for your family.
Right. The Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show is brought to you today by our sponsor, Walton's Inc. You know you care about what's in your food, but what about the fruits and vegetables, whatever you're canning, preserving, freezing, but what about the meat? At waltonsinc.com, you can get all the equipment, seasoning, and supplies to make sausage, jerky, and any other meat product your way to your high standards. Want to make snack sticks that people will actually like? Walton's created meatgistics.com, an informational site to help you make the best finished product. Walton's even has a full line of their own meat grinders, mixers, sausage stuffers, and more to help you go from animal to edible.
One-stop shop.
One-stop shop. So that's waltonsinc.com or meatgistics.com.
Hey there, gardeners. Thanks for checking out this segment of the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show. If you like what you've seen, you can search through the channel and find full in-studio videos of the entire show. If you want to go another route, you can search for it on your favorite podcast platform by searching the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show or the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show, and you can download it and take it with you. You can check out all past seasons at our website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, under the radio tabs at the top of the page. We thank you for joining us. We hope you've learned and enjoyed the show, the segment, and we'll see you next time.